Everyone who serves as a project manager does things a little bit differently and puts their own spin on each individual project. If you go into working for the project management field, you will likely be asked to provide at least a couple of project plans that you've been in charge of developing. That way, the company that you're going to work for can see the level of detail that you provide, and more importantly, can make sure that your style of project management syncs well with their style of project management. There's nothing wrong with an individual style. It's just finding the right fit for you within a company. That said, I'm going to put together a sample project definition document, and realize that yours might look a little bit differently because you'll have your own preferences in each area. So using the scenario that's been provided in the assignment, let's see if we can get it all in here. That's close enough. Let's develop the project definition document. First, we have the project title. And for that, we know that we're putting together an interdepartmental meeting. We know it's going to be held in 30 days. So for this item, let's say October 1st, just to put in a random date. So it would be approximately August 30th or something like that, September 1st, somewhere in there. And that way we can put interdepartmental meeting October or whatever. Then for your purpose, it again is interdepartmental meeting, but your purpose is to be able to provide training, because that's been highlighted, and updates from the different departments. So I'm going to put this on pause and put those items in. There. So there's our first two entries. Next, we have our goals and objectives. And this is one place that differs depending upon the individual person. So you may choose to go with detailed items, but that can get pretty long. And you don't really need to get that long in the project definition document. You'll get there further down when you get into the work breakdown structure. So for this, keeping it at high level, goals and objectives would be interdepartmental meeting for October goes well and is considered a success by all attending. And I'm going to go ahead and enter that. And for me, that's the only objective and goal that I'd put down. Success criteria is another area that some create its own entry for. For me, I prefer putting success criteria as part of the objectives, because that allows me to see what is success and how is it measured. Next is project context. And what you would be looking at for this is you see the word next. That means there have been previous interdepartmental meetings. So you want to make sure that you look back on the project plan from previous interdepartmental meetings so that you can make sure that any issues that were noted have been addressed. Maybe a new bulb is needed in a projector. So you can take care of that ahead of time and you don't have surprises, or at least hopefully don't have surprises. It also allows you the opportunity to verify themes and maybe colors or major changes or Maybe your supervisor said, if we do this again, please make sure that you don't seat these two people together. And you'll note that in your previous project plan so that you can make those changes quietly and before the event happens. So for our cases, project context, we're going to keep it simple because none of that level of challenge is included. So we're going to assume that we're just making sure that the training theme design for the newsletter is, so we're going to make sure that the newsletter has a different color for this time. So to keep it simple, we're going to say the last meeting used green materials, this meeting will use blue. A lot of businesses do change the color each month when they're having meetings so that when people see things on their desk, they can quickly identify when they were from. Project dependencies is our next item, and in this, now you know that you as the project manager are going to be out, so you're dependent on your interns who are also limited in time. So those are two dependencies that you have. You're dependent on having your supervisor get your training materials to you so that you can get items developed and printed in a timely manner. Let's go ahead and list those. Once you have your project dependencies down, you're ready for scope specifications. And you want to be very clear with these. So in the scenario, you are told that the supervisor will conduct the training materials, or will conduct the training herself, and that she will also prepare the original materials. All you're responsible for is copying them. She also very clearly states that she would like you to cater materials or food, so that is within scope. Making homemade brownies would be out of scope and it would be inappropriate because you've been told to complete the task in a different way. Let's take a closer look at assumptions, constraints, and risks. These are often difficult concepts to be able to understand. First, we'll look at assumptions. With assumptions, you we'll first look at assumptions. With assumptions, you are looking at things that will happen, and you have to assume they will happen within a project. So you want to verify that you and be able to assume that your interns will be able to take part during the times that you set for them. You want to and need to be able to assume that the budget funds will become or are available. Things like that, things that you know or hopefully are able to assume are going to take place. You assume that your supervisor is able to provide the training materials so that you can copy them. Constraints are things that you have to deal with. They are part of the limitations in your world, and you need to take them into consideration. So one of the constraints is that your room needs to seat 25 to 30 people, that your budget for food is $100, and that your budget for parking is $100. You have a constraint of you not being there the day of training. And then risks are things that could happen. So you want to lay those out as clearly as possible so that you have addressed how to handle the issue ahead of time, hopefully making the disruption as minimal as possible should it occur. For example, you run the risk of having an intern not attend. So in that case, you would say if the intern does not attend, then divide your time in half for the other intern, set up, leave, and then come back to clean up afterwards. Or another risk that could happen is that the bulb goes out in the projector. So you would include the contact information for the IT department or maintenance or whoever handles that, so that if it does happen, that either your supervisor or the intern can call and arrange for a new light bulb to be put into place. By having that support information, it allows people an opportunity to quickly deal with an issue before it escalates to be something more critical. I'm going to go ahead and put those in now, and then we'll move forward. The risks area could go on and on. I mean, what happens if there's an earthquake? What happens if there's a flood? But really, all you're listing is things that are at least somewhat probable. So an IT-related issue is more likely than an earthquake. Let's move on to preliminary budget. That's preset for us at $200. So we have $100 for food and $100 for parking. Our anticipated resources are our budgeted funds. Now for anticipated resources, we can look to see what we already have. Well, we have our budgeted funds. We have our interns who are going to be able to be there. And we have the copies of the materials that we're going to be bringing to the meeting. I'll go ahead and enter that now. Our primary stakeholders are pretty much the only ones that are involved. So primary are people that are directly involved with the event. That would be your supervisor, you, your interns, and each of the people that are at the meetings. Secondary would be the people that they're taking information back to. So each of the departments that are going to be receiving whatever knowledge is shared during this meeting would be the secondary stakeholders. With our available approaches, we would be looking at different ways that you could handle things. In this case, it's pretty much laid out for you. So your available approaches are provided by your supervisor. Later on, perhaps you have more leniency. So maybe you have the option to whip up something as the snack that's provided, or maybe you could go to the store and buy something prepackaged. So those available approaches would be a broader option. The recommended approach in this case is exactly what you're told by your supervisor: order catering. Technically, you could use available approaches for different ways to have things printed. Maybe you send them out to a copy shop instead of doing them yourself. Maybe your copy machine is down. But then you'll come up with your recommended approach and list that. The reason they are both there is it helps to be able to demonstrate that you've looked at a task from a broad viewpoint and made educated decisions for the path that you've taken. Once you have all of this in place, then you're also going to take a look, and I'll fill this in just a second. You'll also want to look at some ground rules for working with others. And then you put in your team members' names and preferred contact information so that you have it as a starting point, and those would be your primary participants. In this case, it would not include those that are attending the meeting. So it would just be those, it would be the supervisor, you, and your interns who would put down your information. And you may or may not even include your interns. Then, depending upon who needs to approve the project, their names would be listed with their signature and the date of signing so that you can move forward. I encourage you strongly not to move forward without having this in place, this approval, because you don't want it to come back and bite you with, well, I never said to do that. Makes it very clear, and the steps are understood by all involved. So I'll I'll finish this. I'm not going to list these bottom areas, but I'll list these last couple of items, and then we'll take a look at the entire thing one more time. One last look at our project proposal. And keep in mind, yours might look a little differently, and that's okay, as long as you have the information needed to be able to make an informed decision. So let's look at it from the supervisor's point of view. You want to make sure that everyone is clear on what the meeting or what the project is. You want to make sure that everyone understands what the purpose of the project is. You want everyone to be clear on what connotates success. If people have a different viewpoint for what success is, you'll have a very difficult time bringing everybody on the same page. Your project context, you want to, from the supervisor point of view, you want to know that the person who's putting this together has reviewed previous projects to make sure that this isn't a standalone. Then you move into project dependencies and scope specifications, out of scope specifications. You want to make sure that everyone is on the same page with what you need to have done and what you don't expect to be done. You have your assumptions, constraints, and risks. Those are usually looked at en masse to make sure that everyone's on the same page and somebody doesn't think they have an unlimited budget, or that they assume interns are available for 3 hours or unlimited, and that you've addressed at least the most common possible things that could go wrong. You double check your budget to make sure that that is in play and proper, and that you check your resources. Maybe you don't have enough funds in your budget for the copies that you need to do, or maybe the interns have already maxed out their work study funds. So you want to be able to make sure that these are truly in place. And then you have your primary and secondary stakeholders, and I forgot to list that one, so you do want to go back and make sure that you got everything in. And then available and recommended approach. In this case, if I were doing this for an actual work area, I would eliminate this because it's not necessary due to the fact that the supervisor laid it out, so there isn't an available and a recommended. It's just what you were told to do. So it would stop with this item. But should there have been additional options, you would want to be able to provide that. Hope this clarifies how to set up a project definition document. Keep in mind, you'll design your own preferences, layout, areas of focus as you go along, but these are the industry basics. Let me know if you